Hey, Steve here. In this video, we're going to talk about why you would implement a data platform. We'll have a look through a fictional company called TechGrowth as they're scaling up and reasons why they would want to implement a whole data platform. Now, just to warn you, I'll tell you this focuses very much on the benefits of a data platform. In future videos, we're going to go through actually if you really need a data platform. We'll also look at how we can use data platforms with AI and how AI is really changing how we need to implement. And finally, we'll also looking at the ROI of a data platform if it makes sense for your company. That's all in the future though. So in this video, we're going to look at really why you would implement a data platform and specifically what are the benefits of implementing. As I said, we're going to talk about a fictional company called TechGrowth and their journey through implementing this data platform. So let's head over and have a look at TechGrowth and why they're going to implement their data platform. TechGrowth are growing, but with any growing company, they come along with a lot of growing pains. So TechGrowth heavily rely on Excel, and they use this a lot in the finance department for their budgeting, forecasting, and reporting. But despite its flexibility, there is a lot of limitations in Excel, and this becomes even more evident as operations grow and they try and scale. The process is cumbersome and is error prone and lacks scalability. And this is due to the flexibility of Excel, but also its limitations making it hard to scale up. And this really impacts decision making and efficiency. With their growth, and in recent times there's been pending cutbacks, there is an increased need for data. Now the CFO is looking and he knows that the inefficiencies are costing them too much. However, with the finance team ready to excel, he felt like this was the only option and is a little bit stuck in the land of Excel. Now, TechGrowth do not have the budget or ability to wait years for large migrations to a new product. So they need to look at something and they need to get something in soon that can deliver value. So TechGrowth's leadership team recognizes these inefficiencies with many growing companies also doing the same. They know they must transition from this sort of manual and siloed approach with all the teams doing their own thing in Excel. Now they're exploring the solutions to streamline this, their workflows, and also just to get more data into the company and it being used in a better way. So the CFO, in order to undertake this, assembled a task force to oversee an investigation to the biggest issues faced by TechGrowth. And on that task force, we had Gary Enderman, who's the Senior VP in Technology. We had Dipesh Palmer, and he's the Vice President of FP&A in the finance team. And then Melissa Barnes, also in the finance team, Director of Financial Reporting. So these were the three of the team to go and investigate the issues that TechGrowth were having, see what they do and see how they can overcome them. So part 2 is the data task force. Looking at each of these, all of the 3 members of the data task force went and investigated into the problems that TechGrowth were having. Gary Enderman is tasked with analyzing the platform costs of the existing platform they have. He oversees IT costs related to the data activities. So managing this is very important to him. Under pressure again with cutbacks and budget constraints to trim costs from the budget, and IT is getting hit especially hard from this. With many of the users though having their own reports in Excel, there is some shadow IT here and he's unsure exactly how the data is even being used or what is actually out there. Most of the data does come from SAP, but due to an acquisition and TechGrowth is growing, some of the data is also in NetSuite, meaning that integrating this data has got difficult, especially in tools like Excel. So first what he does is he's going to go off and interview several analysts to understand the processes when creating a new report. After this analysis, Gary has identified the process from getting the data into creating a new report and using that data. First, the user sort of downloads their data, they extract it from one or often multiple systems. Then they spend a fair bit of time data cleaning, making sure that all the bad values are out and that the data is in a good state. Then, of course, with the multiple sources, there's lots of mapping files. They have to merge multiple sources into a single file so that the different systems from SAP and NetSuite can actually talk together and be shown in a single report. Of course, next is the custom business logic, the KPIs, the revenues, all of these metrics. Then in Excel, they're going to create these calculations and pivots and start building out their sort of initial data view for the reports. After this, they're going to be doing their budget model development. So they're going to be building the budget. They're going to be looking at this and building the model that powers these reports. Of course, there's a verification and testing. A lot of this, especially when building new reports in Excel, so a lot of things with all this manual work can go wrong. Finally, they get to actually creating the reports. So this is building what they're going to send out to the end users. And of course, the end point is analyzing for these insights, putting them into presentations, into the monthly board decks. Now, Gary looked at all of these and really investigated which of these activities brought value. And it turns out that all of these initial activities don't actually bring any value to the business. They're simply tasks that must be done in order to enable the final two of creating the reports and analyzing them, which do actually give value. So when lining them up, Gary realized that actually non-value added tasks were the bulk of the time. And he estimated that actually around 80% of the team's time is being spent on these non-value adding tasks. These are tasks such as downloading, prepping, manually manipulating data, which enables the value adding tasks, but in themselves, without actually doing the value adding tasks, don't provide any value for the business. So Gary is looking at the end of his months at the board meetings and he sees the cost of platforms are piling up. There's multiple systems that need to be maintained with the acquisitions. There's many licenses as all of the analysts need access to all of these systems in order to go and pull and create their own reports. Productivity is quite low. There's a cost because some of their staff are spending 80% of their time on non-value add activities. So only a fifth of their time is actually being productive. Then there's a headcount issue. Because we have so many different systems and so many different processes, there's a lot of extra headcount. People needed to come and maintain these systems, extra analysts brought on in order to do all these non-value adding tasks, which add up, and a lot of extra headcount is being needed to maintain these processes in a problem that's getting worse as the company scales. So these monthly costs are rising, and Gary has to answer to the CEO in order on why these are going up. Now, after his analysis, Gary came to the conclusion that there's high direct and indirect costs with that platform. Direct costs with licenses and being able to maintain the headcount in order to maintain the platform and the current system, and indirect costs being lost due to bad productivity within the business. The inefficiencies in processes reduce the staff productivity even more. So all the manual work, the manipulating of data, the merging of data sources contribute to this reduction in productivity. More and more reporting requires increases resources to manage these reporting. So as the company grows, as data is needed more and more headcount is needed, and it doesn't scale in a very efficient way. Next, it was Depesh's turn, and he is tasked with analyzing the budget process specifically. His team maintains the reports, and many of these are in Excel. And just like the rest of the business, they're getting more and more requests. Their big part of their job is supplying ad hoc data. Maybe the CFO requires some data in order to look at a certain task, and their team needs to supply that data on ad hoc basis. They can even go all the way up to the CEO, so it's really critical that accurate and timely data is provided. So in order to do his analysis, he first speaks to the FP&A director and to see exactly how these reports and requests are being handled. Now, in the process of building new reports, they've identified that the finance team is responsible for these parts. So they normally get some data from the IT team, which has been downloaded and cleaned, and this is done in different processes. And their part is to develop the budget model. So up until here, and then send the data on, which then other teams can verify it and create the reports. This is the core process that they're looking at. Now, looking at the budget sheet, they identified how this budget sheet was created in Excel. Looking at the budget model, so they have a master budget model in Excel. Now, there's a lot of data that goes into this and a lot of calculations. And being finance, they love their Excel, but this isn't all put into the same Excel sheet because it would just take way too long to open and too much data. And these are stored in some different sheets with some VLOOKUPs across different Excel sheets. So they dug further and found that a lot of these are looking up into the different groupings and the departments in order to do the correct mappings to find the correct data. And it gets really, really deep as all of these products and all of these different departments are kept in their own Excels by different teams. So there is a web as they dug down with VLOOKUPs and links out to all of the different sheets. This is required in order to build this budget model. Now, Depesh really wanted to dig into some of these. So he picked one of them, which was the product grouping, and said, let's have a look at what this product grouping is going on. And he went and looked at the links in the product grouping. And he saw that while a lot of the products were kept on the G drive, actually, one of the Amazon files was kept on Dave's desktop. And it looked like this was left in there, never updated. And Dave actually left the company, they found out a week ago. So this file stopped updating. Really, really common across a lot of files they found in the business. Temporary things where these sheets weren't stored exactly where they were meant to be. Dipesh also realized that the tax rates didn't look quite correct. So he looked at the current tax rate file. Within this file, he found that, look, this hadn't been updated since January the 17th, 2019. Turned out that an old analyst's job was to update this file and keep it stored in the G drive. However, that analyst left at the end of 2018. And so when this was passed over, it was updated once, and then the new analyst forgot, and it was never done again. And this process was just lost with the analyst leaving. So again, for the last 6 years, the tax rate has actually been out of date, and they had no idea that for the last 6 years, the data was actually incorrect. And this was the FP&A's director's process to update this budget model. However, there are many other people in the finance department who have their own reports. For example, another director is in charge of the monthly OPEX sheet. Now, some of these metrics are repeated across the budget report and the OPEX sheet. So Depesh was actually after for an important meeting from the CFO and some ad hoc data, an expense and OPEX expense. It lived in both the budget report and the OPEX sheet. However, when he asked what the answer was and what the data is looking for, both of these actually came with slightly different data. And these because these two processes were independent of each other, owned by separate people. And the CEO is calling up Depeche, and having asked both people and getting different answers, he's actually unsure of the data and doesn't know and has no trust in giving correct information. So Depeche isn't very happy. Lacking report functionality really limits them optimizing costs. So because they don't have a good reporting functionality, everything's in Excel, they have these long drawn out processes. Data quality issues with files not updating, looking up in wrong places. There's a lot of data mistrust. And these different versions of the truth create the misaligned strategies. So he doesn't know what to tell the CEO. The CEO might get different data than somebody else in the organization. Finally, Melissa Barnes, a director of financial reporting. She's tasked with analyzing the reporting capabilities within finance. Her team creates the reports and financial statements for the business. Again, they use mostly Excel due to skills in the product. And the goal is to help the business decrease costs and drive revenue. So generally looking out for the bottom line for the business with their financial statements and reports. Now, first, she's going to analyze her team's process and the effectiveness of the reports they produce. So she looks through the reports, and while some are quite detailed, there is a very big lack of standardization against all of the reports. Different people generally create different styles of reports, all in Excel and getting quite a lot to manage. However, with the reporting solely stuck in Excel, it lacks a lot of detailed functionality. Some users want to understand why the numbers are going up or down and see more detail. Melissa's team is really stuck to the data that they have, which is exports from the systems and that are given by the IT team. They don't go into the level of detail needed. They're unable to link the data in a meaningful way. So if they see something going up or down, such as a product line, they're actually unable to drill into that product line and see more detail and understand why or what is happening with that product line. And they have said that they're getting too many requests as well as the company is growing to be able to spend time creating analysis. So everything they're doing is quite surface level, it's very simple because they simply don't have the time or the resource to really look down and create more advanced analytics or anything in the predictive, anything really useful to the business. So each person has managing a lot of different reports, all the different styles and quite limited functionality. Melissa has a lot of questions from a lot of different stakeholders wanting to analyze and drill down into these reports, which she's finding very difficult to handle. So Melissa's unhappy too. The reports do not enable the ability to find new opportunities or to help the business grow revenues. The lack of BI tooling stopped users understanding the data. So they're unable to drill into the data properly. They're unable to see different areas of growth and really have more advanced analytics. And then the time needed to create the reports. This means they weren't able to actually perform the detailed analysis due to the time needed just to create these reports. The data task force has analysed and found quite a few problems. While everyone can relate to the problems, the CFO really wanted to drill deeper and understand what the actual cost of having this bad data meant to the business. He summarized each key finding from each of the task force. In technology, they found that the platform costs was a huge drain on the business. In the finance team, the process inefficiencies really stopped their team allowing to create good and trustful data. Reporting challenges meant that there was little drilling down and identification of new opportunities. Looking at the platform costs, we could see there was direct platform costs for infrastructure, licensing, redundant storage, and underutilized tools. There was also the direct labor costs from having more analysts who were doing duplicated and manual processes, and all of the multiple teams sort of recreating the same processes across the business. The inefficiencies also drove some direct costs. The direct decision costs from poor decisions made due to mistrust in the data. And this is when the CEO didn't have the correct data to make a correct decision. There's also costs from errors made, the financial impact of acting on actually incorrect data, such as bad tax rates. We had the reporting challenges. These actually drove a lot of opportunity costs. So there was lost revenues or savings, right, to early identify trends or to actually see where the market was going. And then because of the long time it took, which meant a slow execution on initiatives, and even stopping bad value projects too slowly. So this time to react being very slow also stopped a lot of opportunity costs from developing. CFO, very good CFO. He understands how profit is made. And what we do is we took our revenue, we minus our costs, and then that equals the profits. However, when we drill in and look at this, we see these costs. We have those additional platform costs in here. We have those processing efficiencies with the directional costs and the error costs. And then in the revenue, we have the reporting challenges, which actually limits the potential revenue. So the CFO wants to get rid of these, and by adding these up, we could see there's a lot of missing profit that we can actually make from the bottom line of the business. By solving these reporting challenges and by reducing these costs, it's going to massively impact our bottom line and really help drive the business in a correct strategy and a good direction. Now, big question is, how do we do this? What does the journey to data excellence look like? So we have the platform costs, the inefficiencies, and the reporting challenges to overcome. Looking at each one and starting with the platform costs. The answer to this, and what we want to do, is bring in some good data infrastructure. If we were to automate the non-value adding tasks, right, we can reduce the inefficiencies here and the costs. We could automate a lot of the productivity problems away. We could bring in AI agents to help run some of this, and we could reduce the need for so many licenses and running so many different systems. Building master data. A single source of truth, this master data, enables all of our data to be taken from the same place. Therefore, everyone has the same numbers, and we're not relying on these processes of many Excel sheets linked up together. We have a master data, single source of data to pull this from, with reusable KPIs and reusable metrics. And then we can bring in our advanced analytics. Once we have our infrastructure and our master data in place, correct BI tool will open many opportunities, and then this will open us up for AI. We can unleash AI into our business now that we have our data in a correct place to find these opportunities and reduce our opportunity costs. Data infrastructure. This is by building a data platform, looking at the following components of the data infrastructure, and then a reporting and BI layer. Now, the key part here is building that data infrastructure, getting those automated pipelines and processes in place. A reporting and BI layer over the top is how we interact with that data. That lets us, in the exploration layer and the semantic layer, lets end users access this data. Because of course, we don't just build and store the data in the infrastructure, we have to have the business able to use it. So these two components are the big way to solve those platform costs, to automate a lot of the processes, increase our productivity. Looking at those process inefficiencies with the master data. This is building MDM, master data management. It's all about this single source of truth, having good data consistency. In addition, we have this governance and strategy around the data, which makes sure we're using the data in a secure and correct way, but making sure that we have a single source of trusted and validated and AI ready data. Once we have those in place, we can look at this advanced analytics. This is building our apps, getting our agentic AI workflows in, automating some of these end uses, and unleashing our AI and machine learning, helping us do apps, interactions, and AI on our data to uncover new opportunities and really have some advanced analytics to drive the business. Put together, this builds a very powerful data platform, a data platform that overcomes these very manual and inefficient processes, brings us better productivity in driving down costs, whilst increasing potential revenue and increasing our potential for advanced analytics and better detection of new trends. So, before and after implementing these solutions, what we tell the business is we can still use our tools like Excel. We're not taking the Excel away from finance, but we use them as a front end. We use them to connect and to interact, to actually analyze the data in a value-added way. Not doing all of the inefficiencies in Excel, such as building the metrics, storing the data, but using it as a tool to build reports and to analyze. The automated pipelines dramatically reduce time to reports. So without having to do much of that non-value added tasks, we can get reports a lot quicker. Our single source of truth, our master data, to eliminate these data inconsistencies, gives us good, trusted, validated, and AI ready data. And then the advanced analytics for investigation of new opportunities lets us grow the business and do things we'd never dreamt of before. Looking at our team and then solving these issues with our data infrastructure, our master data, and our advanced analytics to really drive and overcome these inefficiencies from our poor processes and manual work. And there we go. So here are some reasons and benefits of implementing that data platform. Please subscribe and like if you want to carry on and see the next videos in the series. We'll talk about sort of why you might not implement a data platform, how AI is changing data platforms, and also the ROI of data platforms. Check out the other videos in the data platform series and some of the other tech videos we have on this channel. Thank you so much as well, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video. Goodbye.